Almighty God, we pray for your blessing upon this council. Help and prosper its work for the advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established amongst us all. Amen. Please be seated. Manningham City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land we now know as Manningham. We pay our respects to Wurundjeri elders, past and present, and value the ongoing contribution to Manningham. Manningham contribution made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. I'd like to especially welcome members of the public who've joined us. Yes, first time in 12 months. And also online, thank you, to witness tonight's proceedings. This is our first meeting back since March last year with people in the chambers. But for the safety of councillors, staff and community, we are adhering to the current physical distancing requirements as determined by the state government, and seating is limited in the council chamber. There is additional seating available on the outside of the chamber in the council foyer where people can be seated. I'd also like to advise that tonight's meeting is being video and audio recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your voice and or image is broadcast by council. As with all council meetings, we are still taking questions from the public, and I encourage you to submit your questions in accordance with our normal practice. As we transition back to in-person meetings, we will continue to take questions from members of the public who do not feel comfortable in attending the meetings in person. In these circumstances, the CEO will read out the questions and a response will be provided where we have the information at hand. If we're unable to provide a meaningful response, we will take your question on notice and provide a response in writing. We'll deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and 2 questions on any one issue. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing through our normal channels. Council meetings are governed by Manningham's governance rules. I'll introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda, calling it by number and by reading the title. I will then call for a mover and seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are able to join the debate on an item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. Item 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence. There are no apologies. Item 3, prior notification of conflict of interest. I have submitted written disclosures of conflict of interest for tonight's meeting for item 10.1 concerning council's submission to the Yarra River Bulleen Precinct Advisory Committee. The interest being a general interest due to my membership at the Yarra Valley Country Club. Would any other councillor like to declare a conflict of interest for tonight's meeting? No?
Later, Mr. Mayor. I'll do it.
No? Later. Yep, thank you. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover for the motion?
I move it.
Councillor Chen.
I move that the minutes of council meeting held on 23rd February 2021 be confirmed.
Do I have a seconder?
I can second that, Mr. Mayor.
I will put that motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 5, presentations. 5.1, acknowledgement of Ross Dawson, CEO, Manicare. Now, Ross, if you could just stand up for a minute so people can see who we're talking about. You can sit down if you like. But I know you're a fit guy, so you should be able to stand up for quite a while. But no, it's okay. But so, Ross, on behalf of Manningham Council, I would like to take the opportunity to recognise you for your role as Manicare's CEO over the last 17 years. And I would also like to acknowledge here tonight David Mickeljong, AM, Chairman of Manicare, who is also here in support. I know that Ross is taking long service leave and his actual retirement will be mid-next year. However, this is the time that we can get together to acknowledge the work that you have done, Ross, in shaping the successful not-for-profit aged care service that is Manicare. Under Ross's leadership, Manicare has developed from its beginnings as Manningham Community Association. Ross has guided the organisation's strategic partnerships and strengthened the Manningham aged care system. And all the while, Ross has maintained a focus on leading his team with empathy, care and understanding while caring for older people. This is something that many Manningham families really appreciate, including some of our councillors here tonight who have had family members residing at Manicare. The aged care sector has come under the spotlight recently. As a community, we have heard about the need to ensure our older adults are cared for in a way that promotes dignity and respect. And Manicare has always been a quality provider of residential aged care as well as in-home services, rehabilitation and home maintenance. Ross is well known within the aged care sector for his expertise and good judgment, and we have been lucky to have Ross guiding Manicare's development. Ross has been an innovator, developing POWER, an exercise program for oncology wellness and exercise rehabilitation to assist people who are undergoing cancer treatment. Ross has overseen the transformation of building works at Manicare, which have further enhanced the look and comfort of a thriving residential environment. He was also an integral part of the significant aged care review undertaken with Council, which transformed our contractual arrangements from the past into a more contemporary and sustainable future model of aged care. Ross is also well known for his passion for mountain climbing and mountain biking. He regularly rode to work, showing great fitness and braving the traffic. And as I understand it, Ross, you plan to be doing a 1,000-kilometre hike in Western Australia later on this year. Thank you, Ross, on behalf of Manningham. Thank you for your nearly 17 years in leading Manicare and making a difference in many lives within our community. The work you have done and have set in motion will be felt for many years and decades to come. So perhaps you could come out here, Ross. So as a gesture of our appreciation, I present you this. Thank you on behalf of Manningham. Good job.
Thank you very much.
And there's something you can put on your wall. Thank you.
Very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ross.
Great job.
Item 5.2, passing of Kenneth William Falconer, OAM. Councillors, it's with deep sadness that I must inform you of the recent passing of Kenneth William Falconer, OAM. Mr Falconer received a Medal of the Order of Australia in 2014 for his services to the Doncaster community, in particular for his volunteer work with the Templestowe Traders Association, Manningham Probus Interest Group and Doncare. Mr Falconer was also awarded Citizen of the Year by Manningham City Council in 2005. Do I have a mover?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a motion, if that's okay, and I'll read it out if that's okay.
Councillor Gough.
Thank you. And that is that Council place on record its sadness at the recent passing of Mr Kenneth William Falconer, OAM, record its appreciation for the contribution by Mr Falconer to the Manningham community and extend its sympathy and condolences to the Falconer family at this very difficult time.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kleinert. Would you like to speak, Councillor Gough?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I will take the opportunity to stand and talk about the work of Mr Falconer in our community. He was really known well by so many of our community, and he was the face of, I suppose, volunteering in our community to me for as long as I can remember in Manningham. So when I became a councillor just a couple of years ago, or quite a few years ago actually, he was a person that would be attending all of those civic functions and other functions and associations within Manningham, in particular the Doncaster, the Probus Club, and any other groups and associations that had activities. Now, Dennis would be there with his beaming smile on his face. In fact, he was the beacon of volunteering at Manningham, because you would actually see him jump out of the bus with lots of people, transporting them to all of the functions, being involved in the functions, and when they needed an extra man for a line dance or whatever, guess what? He was always in there pulling the part, being very, very embracing of his love and affection for all other people and other humanity. And in fact, he was that beacon of light for so many people, and brought such happiness to an immense number of people that were frail, disengaged in the community, and he would get them involved in our community. And it's a sad loss. He's a man that I don't think we can replace because of the excellent work that he did, his great nature with everybody, and his offering to always volunteer to go the hard yards. He'd be the first there and the last to leave at all of those functions and everything. So, Mr Mayor, he will be sadly missed in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Kleinert? No? I would like to put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried. Item 6, petitions. Item 6.1, petition. Objection to pop-up park at Jackson Court East, Doncaster. Do I have a mover? Councillor Laura May.
I move that the petition with 1,013 signatories objecting to the pop-up park at Jackson Court be received and referred through the appropriate officer for consideration.
Do I have a seconder?
I second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. I will put that motion. Those in favour? Thank you, and that is carried. Sorry, that was a procedural mistake. Sorry, Councillor Main, would you like to speak to the motion at all? Councillor Chen, thank you. Item 6.2, petition, Hillcroft Drive SBO removal group. Do I have a mover?
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stephen Main. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to the motion? Could you read it in full, perhaps, Councillor?
I move that the petition with 26 signatories requesting that the Hillcroft Drive SBO removal group be addressed in a single meeting at 10 a.m. on Saturday, 27 March 2021 be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Main. That being read, and I have a mover and seconder, would you like to speak to it, Councillor Main?
Just briefly to thank Vincent and Paul, who are in the gallery tonight, for going to the trouble of putting this petition together, and to inform them that I think there will be, in the period ahead, broad meetings with the wider group, as well as the opportunity for the individual affected residents to have one-on-one meetings with Melbourne Water and council officers. So I think all parties will hopefully be accommodated by that. We appreciate the stress that's come from the 37 overlays that have been applied in your street, and that obviously you're pushing hard for some changes to that. Hopefully the process will bring some good news on that front in the not too distant future. But it was an important process to go through. Consultation is important, and your request for a group meeting will be taken seriously.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And as carried. Item 6.3, petition, rejection of the proposed Macedon Road streetscape design. Do I have a mover?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Diamante, would you like to move it?
I move that the petition with 92 signatories seeking council to reject the proposed streetscape design for Macedon Road and seek a new design that is supported by traders and residents be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Diamonte. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goff. Councillor Diamonte, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Goff?
No.
I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried. Item 6.4, joint letter, Macedon Square Traders, option C. Do I have a mover?
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Could I ask you to read the motion in full, please, Councillor?
Thank you. I move that the joint letter with 30 signatures proposing an alternate option C to the Macedon Square streetscape work options to improve the functionality and aesthetics of the Macedon Square be received and referred through the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lightbody. Councillor Goff.
No, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Lightbody. I will put that motion. Councillor Mayne, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'll obviously support the petition and just make the point that if any traders or residents are watching tonight's proceedings, we do have a consultation meeting tomorrow night from 5:30 till 7 p.m. at the community centre next to Macedon Square, where all the different options, including the so-called option C, can be canvassed and discussed in a very open, transparent forum. So hopefully the petitioners, along with as many other traders and stakeholders at Macedon Square, can all come to this council-facilitated meeting to have a really solid, full 90-minute discussion on all the different options and possibilities with the proposed streetscape improvements at Macedon Square.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne, for the reminder. And I will put that motion. Those in favour? And that's been carried. Item 6.5, petition installation of seats at Finn's Reserve. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to read the motion, please?
Sorry, I move that the petition signed by 46 people requesting the review and installation of additional seats at Finn's Reserve be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kleinert, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Councillor Kleinert. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried. Sorry, those against? Sorry, that was four. That was four. Yeah. That was carried unanimously, for the record. 6.6, petition, management of Aquarina Leisure Centre. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stephen Mayne. Would you like to read the motion, please?
Mr Mayor, I move that the motion that Council has received a petition drawing attention to various issues and concerns regarding the management of Aquarina Leisure Centre. The lead petitioner advises that many members of the centre are unhappy with the management, and the petition includes a number of recommendations for improvements to its operations. As this petition relates to the management of Council's leisure facilities, I would ask that the matter be referred through to the Director of City Services for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, I second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Yes, just some brief comments. I just like to open by acknowledging I think that 5 of the petitioners have taken the trouble to come out tonight and attend the meeting. So I'd like to thank Diana, Mario, Enzo, Ron and the lead petitioner Sarah White for coming out tonight to formally observe their petition coming in. Now, around 140 signatures is a significant petition. I met with 3 of the petitioners at Aquarina last week and then had a walking tour with them, and I think that there are clearly some issues that need to be addressed at Aquarina. I won't go into enormous detail. There's 16 points in the petition, but it ranges from some cleaning issues, the temperature of the hydrotherapy pool, the operating hours of hydrotherapy, not operating full length of time on the weekends, disabled parking bays, levels of maintenance, staffing ratios, the lockers, the pebble mix underfoot, a number of the disability access issues, the quality of the disability facilities, and even the issues such as COVID safety plans and broad issues of maintenance and the number of aqua aerobic classes. So A couple of years ago, we changed our manager at Aquarina. It had for over a decade been managed by the YMCA, and then after a competitive tender, we went to Jeff Lord's Belgravia, and they've been running it for the last couple of years, and I think it's a 5-year contract with the 2.5 years to go. So COVID's been a tricky situation. I think there's been a 7-figure hit on council's revenues or budget because of COVID, because it's a profit share arrangement, and it has caused, or the whole interruption of COVID and the facility closing has obviously caused is a major disruption to the contract, causing some financial pressures, and which I'm not sure, but may be playing into questions of the upgrades and the maintenance and the spending on capital works. So as the owner of the facility, we need to take an interest, an active interest in the quality of the facility, the level of staffing, the services and the maintenance. And so I'd like to thank the petitioners for drawing these to our attention. 140 signatures is a significant number of petitioners. It is our most popular facility with close to 1 million visitors a year. And so it is our biggest used facility from 5:30 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And it is disappointing to see that there's a significant number of users who have got concerns and issues that they've been now articulated. And we as a council need to take these seriously, engage with the contractor, take an interest ourselves and ensure that as many as possible of these issues can be addressed. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your interest, and we will take these issues seriously.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Councillor Lang, anything to add?
No, nothing further to add. Well said.
I will put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that is being carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 7, public question time. We've received a number of questions for tonight's meeting. Our first question has been submitted to council from Mrs. Meg Downey, and our CEO will read out her questions. Thank you, Mr. Day.
Thank you, Mayor. The first question is, in view of council's excellent vaccination program, is it proposed for council to administer COVID vaccinations? Also, when will flu vaccinations be available?
Mrs. Downey, thank you for your first question. As the question relates to the COVID vaccinations, I will ask Mr. Angelo Carambas, Director, City Planning and Community, to please respond.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, in response to the COVID vaccination, it's the state and federal government who's responsible for the COVID vaccination program and are currently rolling out that program with the health providers in the region. Council officers are meeting with those health providers and offering any assistance that we could possibly give, but council is not responsible for the vaccine rollout. As I said, it's the state and federal government. But yeah, we have offered our services, but we would need significant resourcing should council become more active in that space. In terms of the flu vaccination, it's this time of year that we begin that program, and the influenza vaccine is due to arrive in about 2 weeks, we believe. So we're getting ready to kickstart that process. So residents will be able to book in for that through our website, through the online immunisation session program, or as is normally, usually the case, people can also have the option to go through their GP or a pharmacy.
Thank you, Mr. Carambas. Question 2. Mr. Day.
Thank you, Mayor. The council website is so difficult to navigate. When is the council website going to be made more user-friendly?
Again, thank you for your question, Mrs. Downey. As this question relates to Manningham's website, I'll ask Ms. Karen Patterson, Group Manager, People and Communications, to please respond. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your very timely question, Ms. Downey. We are currently reviewing our website and plan to have a new website ready by the end of this year. Our goal is to ensure the website is easier and faster to navigate and find information. We will be reaching out to the community via various means towards further through this year so we can improve the online experience, and are looking forward to providing updates through Manningham Matters and our digital channels on how you can get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I just ask for, just while we're deliberating here, if you need to talk, you're welcome to go outside, that'd be great. Thank you.
We're unfamiliar with the way this works.
Okay.
Please sincerely apologise.
No, that's okay.
I've just got just a little bit of a situation where we didn't know how it worked, and Sarah wanted to ask a couple of questions and just have a quick little chat about the situation there at the port. I can take them outside if you like.
So I think the process would be, so Carrie, can any more questions be asked, submitted? Right. So there's a process where the questions have to be submitted prior to the meeting.
Time afterwards?
No, this is for councillors. Yeah. So you're welcome to stay around, and I'm sure an officer will be willing to have a good discussion with you. If you'd like to leave now, that's fine too. So it's up to you. We'll probably be going another 40 minutes or so. With the I can't. Yeah. So that disrupts our meeting, Steve. So I'll. That's okay. No, that's okay.
I'll be in contact and leave you.
I'm sorry, I'm happy. So, Councillor Main, I'll give you leave while we're still asking questions. That'll be fine. If I can get you to come back in the chamber for the next item of business. Okay. And we move on.
Again, my apologies. Sorry.
That's okay. It's not. Sometimes don't apologise. Don't apologise. It's fine. Okay, so our next question is from Mr. Paul Harris. Mr. Harris, would you like to come forward to the microphone, please? Sorry, that microphone, Paul. Thank you. So, Paul, you have a couple of minutes to make a brief introductory statement before you ask your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Andrew Conn. My name's Paul Harris. I'm the representative of the Hillcroft Drive SBO removal group. An SBO has been applied to a number of properties in Hillcroft Drive in Templestowe, and many property owners believe the process of applying the SBO to the Hillcroft Drive properties has not been carried out with due diligence. The SBO boundary is not supported by engineering data, and advice from expert consultants employed by Melbourne Water has been ignored by Melbourne Water. The Hillcroft Drive SBO removal group has been formed to represent property owners in Hillcroft Drive who seek to have the SBO reviewed and removed if appropriate. Melbourne Water and Manningham Council agreed last year to review the SBO boundary after flood modelling and re-engineering was to take place later this year. We've been informed by Melbourne Water that it would be completed by September. We received a letter from Melbourne Water dated the 21st of February 2021 indicating Melbourne Water would like to hold one-to-one meetings with residents in Hillcroft Drive to discuss the Melbourne Water's preliminary findings of the SBO. And Melbourne Water has totally ignored the SBO removal group that's been formed specifically to address this issue. We certainly would like a lot more transparency and details of any preliminary review should be made available to this group before any meetings. And we expect the SBO removal group to be addressed as an entity as we brought this issue up in the first place. So my question is, why is Manningham City Council Melbourne Water asking for individual meetings with property owners in Hillcroft Drive, Templestowe, that have been impacted by the SBO, and not addressing the community group that's been formed?
Well, thank you for your question, Mr Harris. As the question relates to flood management, I'll ask Mr Angelo Carambas, Director of City Planning and Community, to please respond.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your question, Mr Harris. As pointed out by Councillor Mayne earlier, we're more than happy to, as council, to organise a joint meeting, and we're talking to Melbourne Water about that. So that's not a problem. I just want to make that clear. We're happy to do that. The reason why we chose to go down the path of individual meetings with residents in the area, it was our understanding that that was the commitment that we gave early on in previous conversations that we had with you and Mr Tester. But again, I apologise if there's been a misunderstanding about that. Look, the purpose of the one-on-one meetings with individual residents was to clearly, I suppose, explain as best we can to those residents how the preliminary findings of the review impact their property. Because what we've found, what Melbourne Water is finding, and the work isn't completed yet, I should make that clear, is that the review has found that there's variations between properties. So the one-on-one meeting was an opportunity to dive down into those preliminary findings for each property and explain that to the resident and enable the resident to ask questions specific to their property. Now, that's possible in a group meeting, but it's not as efficient. The other benefit and that we saw of having a one-on-one meeting is that, and as yourself and Mr Tester pointed out, there was a number of residents who speak a language other than English, and the letter that you quoted, my understanding, did offer, as we normally do in situations like this, interpreter services. So I was able to have a more tailored response to the needs of individual residents, but there was no intention to sideline the group as a whole. It was a strategic approach we thought would enable better engagement with the residents and drill down into the specific issues without breaching privacy across the 35 plus residents. But that's why we took that path. But we're happy to have a public open meeting with all the group.
Great. Thank you, Mr Harris.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Carambas. Our next question is from Mr Vincent Tester. Mr Tester, would you like to come to the microphone, please? Good evening.
We meet again.
You have a couple of minutes to make a brief introductory statement to your question.
Actually, I'll make two brief introductions. First of all, tonight I'm speaking on behalf of, my apologies, councillors, mayors and the CEO. Tonight I'm speaking on behalf of the Manningham Ratepayers Association organisation regarding councillors' remuneration. The example I'll give you is this. This past Sunday morning, Councillor Stephen Mayne visited the Hillcroft Drive SBO Removal Group chairperson to investigate the ongoing dispute over flood overlays applied to Hillcroft Drive. The ramification of this dispute will affect properties further than Hillcroft Drive. Melbourne Water has recognised that they have made errors, but the dispute continues. The consequences of having an SBO does affect the value of all properties Australia-wide. The lower value of properties due to SBO will result in less revenue for council, and this lower revenue will result in a reduction of services to the community. Councillor Mayne on Sunday morning spent over an hour listening to concerns raised by the residents. He has been one of the very few councillors to visit and evaluate for himself the information that has been put forward as to why we should not have an SBO on our properties. The Manningham Ratepayers Association organisation are of the opinion that this extra work should be remunerated, and therefore we agree that the increase of remuneration be allowed. I hope you like that, more money in your pockets. Secondly...
Do you have a question? Or
Yes, I do, but this is part of it. I also wish to congratulate Manningham City Council on their February 2021 Manningham Matters magazines concerning the way it informs multicultural citizen. This is perfect. This is what I've been fighting for, as you know, Andrew. My question is, will Manningham continue the same format to include our multicultural citizen in the future published magazine of Manningham Matters?
Thank you, Mr Tester.
You're most welcome.
As the question relates to communication, I'll ask Ms Karen Patterson, Group Manager, People and Communication, to please respond. Thanks again, Karen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Mr Tester, for your question and your feedback. The short answer is yes, we are intending to continue to provide news in various languages for our community. We have historically provided some limited translation in our Manningham Matters publication, and as you've rightly presented there to us, we have increased the amount of stories that we're translating to 2 pages in our Manningham Matters and have titled that section News in Your Language. Manningham is also working with our culturally diverse communities to help improve and develop and review the ways we're communicating with these groups, and we will continue to do that. In addition to the changes in language in Manningham Matters, we've also increased the number of translations that we're providing to many cultural groups. We are also working with community groups at the moment to encourage them to be part of a focus group around our website to also provide us with feedback on that. And in addition to that, we've recently added Google Translate to our website and the Your Say Manningham pages so people from culture groups can provide feedback on various projects. We have also added Read Speaker to our website following the advice that there are people in the community who may be able to understand the spoken word better than the written word. So thank you for your question and feedback.
And thank you for the extra effort you've been putting forward. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Vincent. Our next question is from Mr Gary Siganek. Mr Siganek, would you like to come forward to the microphone? You have 2 minutes to make a brief introductory statement before asking your questions.
Thank you very much. Gary Siganek, I'm President of Masson Square Traders. Thanks to the Mayor and the Councillors and the guests here for this opportunity. Why are you doing this to us again? This is the 3rd time in 25 years we're going through this. I think everybody's here because we care, but we also have to have understanding. I'd like to acknowledge Stephen Main's comments earlier on tomorrow night's meeting. We look forward to that. Are you aware of the 89 centre upgrade, which had full consultation? I was part of that team with Noel Stevens, former councillor. It was a trade at the centre, and Ed Johnson, and that was with full consultation. That went very well. There was never any problems later on because of that. Are you aware of the 96 upgrade? There was a little consultation, and that's the reason why we're here today, because of the deteriorating situation with the bricks and the trees. Are you aware of the first choice Aldi development, which took park spaces away, which we had to fight at VCAT to get our car spaces back when we actually owned the land, so we were deeply affected by that. There's my 3 things. They're not questions though. Commercial zone, it's not a residential zone, so there's no place there for a park in a commercial zone. We don't believe this has been a genuine consultation process. It's only involved the council officers spruiking option B. We forwarded our option C, which everybody's got, with 95% trader support, 318 resident signatures in 2020 calling for a new plan. I think you're aware of that. I don't think these things should be ignored. I think the submission system was not advertised to us all till I intervened. The system has been smoke and mirrors. Frank, your engineer, he did actually concede that the narrowing of Macedon Road was in part to actually discourage residents from driving down Macedon Road. I don't think this is actually helping the residents in the area by doing that. Where and also in the world is the narrowing of the road making it safer. So we actually feel that this plan is you're reducing the car spaces, you're reducing our ample visibility, and I'll also point to the 3 accidents in Jackson Court in the last week where you actually put that pop-up COVID seating area. You're playing with, you're making this place a lot less safer with the plans that you guys are pushing forward. It's a full plan from a safety and functionality perspective that will have a negative impact on retail An injury and loss of business will be on you guys. You'll own it. It's an ill-conceived plan based on feelings and thoughts, not on experience and facts. Okay, question 1. Are you aware that Council's online option A and B submission process compelled you to choose either A or B at the end to submit your opinion, even if your submission was not in favour of either? This means that the officer's use of the data at the Council's December 15, 2020 meeting is misleading. Will you investigate this further? That was our experience. That's experience of everybody I know. Are you aware, question 2, are you aware that the 96, 97 upgrade and the first choice liquor elderly development, Masson Square lost car spaces that we purchased in the late 60s and 70s, and the streetscape will shed 6, and this streetscape will shed 6 or 8 more spaces. Do you think this is how you should support small business? Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Siganek. Given that that relates to the proposed Masson Square streetscape upgrade, I'll ask Mr. Angelo Karambas, Director of City Planning and Community, to please respond.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your comments and questions. In response to your first question about the petition, you are correct that the survey sought a response for either option A or B, the A or B concepts that were developed and endorsed by Council to go out for public sort of consultation. However, the survey also invited comments and people's other feedback. It wasn't limited just to, A or B. And a number of respondents did make it clear that they did not support either option. And the report we presented to Council noted that about 13% of all the submissions received, which was about 102, did not favour either option. So that was considered by the Council. As an officer, I don't believe the process was misleading. However, I have noted your feedback, and in future with surveys like that, we'll look at providing another option or another alternative tick the box scenario, as well as giving people the opportunity to make comment, as we did. In response to your second question about the loss of previous car parking and the loss of proposed car parking now and the impact on business. So what I'll say to that is that based on sort of the current designs that have been put out there for feedback, and that's all they are, that no decisions have been made yet, the maximum number of spaces to be reduced is only 6, and we think we could probably bring that down further, subject to further detailed design. And by doing that, we're hoping to accommodate a number of improvements that will make the centre more attractive and functional in the longer term into the future. So this includes more and safer spaces for pedestrians, an improved circulation for traffic to make that safer, new pedestrian crossings to reduce the risk that exists there now, and as you said, a potential new open space or a square in the context of an activity centre rather than a traditional park. So we've also, as you'd be aware, conducted independent traffic assessments that have concluded that the suggested reduction in car parking will not have a detrimental impact on the centre, and that the way the concept, I suppose, is seeking to distribute car parking more evenly across the centre, because the analysis also found that there is actually underutilised car parking in the centre, but it's not being used because everyone clearly, as you would know, prefers to park in certain locations closer to the Manningham Road end. So that was another objective. It's trying to maximise the assets we've already got there in terms of car parking. So, look, Council, the officer's intention in taking this path to date was to try to provide a better experience for all the shoppers and the users of that centre, but all options are on the table. Council hasn't made a decision. Council has sought to go down further consultation, and as Councillor Main outlined, there's more sessions coming up, with the next one tomorrow, which I'm sure we'll hear from the traders and property owners about the priorities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. C. Thanks, Gary, for your time tonight. Item 8, admissions of urgent business. Is there, do I have a mover?
Mr Mayor, I move that Council admits for consideration the following urgent business item at item 14 of this meeting. Item 14.1, Manningham City Council MAV State Council motion.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Councillor Main? Councillor Lightbody, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 9, planning permit applications. There are no planning permit applications. Item 10, city planning and community. I have declared a conflict of interest. I'll leave the room and hand the chair over to Deputy Mayor Anna Chen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can officer confirm that Mr. Chair has left the room? Yes, thank you. All right, item 10.1.
Madam Mayor, acting
Councillor
Mayor,
Goff.
Deputy Mayor. I wish to, at this stage, declare a general conflict of interest under the Local Government Act of 2020. This is a new Local Government Act, and in that Act defines conflicts have changed. These new rules are untested, not readily defined, and open to interpretation and assertion. If there is an interpretation that by knowing and continuing a civil relationship with a former councillor colleague who has been doing work on this project and involved in the project, if that raises a conflict in the eyes of others, I am declaring this and am acting with an abundance of caution and will remove myself from the meeting at the chamber for this item of 10.1.
Thank you, Councillor Goff, for your precaution measure.
Well, it's a declaration and I'm removed.
Thank you. Can officer confirm that Councillor Goff has left the chamber? Thank you. Now, let's proceed with item 10.1. Councillor's submission to the Yarra River Bullying Precinct Advisory Committee that addresses the draft land use framework plan and proposed Yarra Valley Country Club redevelopment amendment C125. Councillors, do I have a mover?
I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Main. Do I have a seconder?
You do, Mr Mayor. Oh,
Thank you, Councillor Carley. Councillor Stephen Main, would you like to speak for the motion?
Madam Acting Chair, before speaking for the motion, I've actually got some questions for Director of City Planning, Angelo Corumbus. And the first one, given the significance of this proposed rezone and the fact that it hasn't been to council for a couple of years, is just if Angelo could provide a brief summary of where we're at in this very long and complex process.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Main. So I now direct the questions to Mr. Angelo Corumbus, Director of City Planning and Community.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Look, I won't sort of repeat what's in the report, but just by a quick overview, council officers have been liaising with the proponents for that on that side for at least 2 years, probably longer, to try to achieve a good sort of net community outcome for the Manningham residents. What's before you tonight is a summary, or is the actual submission that we put to a recent advisory committee that was set up by the Minister for Planning to hear both a planning scheme amendment to rezone part of all of the land in the Yarra Valley Country Club to enable a residential development and future public open space, and at a more strategic level also to consider the Bulleen land use planning framework that covers that site and beyond. It covers a broader corridor. It's a strategic piece of work that the government's undertaken and is consistent with the work the government is doing on the Yarra strategic plan. So as noted in that submission, the council officers were generally of the view that the Bulleen land use planning framework was a good, sound document and generally consistent with council's policy position on a number of matters, subject to a few tweaks which were outlined in the submission. But we raised, disappointedly, even though we had worked with the proponents over a considerable period of time, we were not in a position to offer general support for a redevelopment of the Yarra Valley Country Club because the proponent, we believe, failed to address a number of key issues as outlined in the submission, and they range from adequate urban design analysis, adequate analysis on the impact of flooding issues, because they were proposing to extend the development footprint into the floodplain, through to the interface with the Sonoco site, which is an industrial use, and the potential impact of the impact on the amenity of residents in the future should an amendment be permitted by the Minister. So the decision's sort of outside Council's hands at this point. The Minister will make a decision on both the amendment and the planning framework for that area.
You mentioned the Sonoco site. It seems that Sonoco, which I think is a multinational company, hasn't made any form of submission to the process, and so they're a very key abutting neighbour to both the Yarra Valley Country Club site and our future soccer fields at the golf driving range. Do we have any insight as to what their view is, why they're not engaging, whether they have any long-term plans, or is it just they're just not talking to anyone and it's a complete mystery on what they think should happen at this key abutting site to their property?
Yeah, look, our position, we don't have any information about what their future intentions are, but as noted in our submission, we've advocated to the advisory committee that it should also consider the future of that site, and our preference would be for some form of mixed use and employment generating uses to remain in that site, given the impact of the North East Link project on the Bulleen Industrial Precinct and the overall loss of job opportunities in Manningham.
So would you like to speak for the motion then?
Oh, no, if anyone else has any other questions.
Councillor.
Thank you. Could I ask the relevant director to clarify the significance of this land in the overall big picture for our Yarra Valley open space pathway all along the Yarra River?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor. As I sort of alluded to in my opening comment, it is quite significant, this piece of land, because it does form part of the Yarra River Corridor and the Yarra Strategic Plan and the Bulleen Land Use Planning Framework. So, and it almost forms a barrier at the moment in connecting sort of public and semi-public places along the river corridor. So ultimately, consistent with Council's aspirations, as outlined in the Yarra concept plan that Council endorsed about a year ago, the aim would be to open that area up and provide connectivity in terms of shared path networks and open space, etc.
Thank you. Angelo, I'm interested in you providing some further information when you talked about the proximity of the proposed residential development to the floodplain.
So I don't have the stats with me, but their intention is to effectively extend the current sort of built form pad that they have, where the clubhouse and other activities are, and to effectively fill part of the site to maximise the development potential on the site. So that's not a problem per se in terms of doing that, but it has to have regard to the impact on the floodplain. And what we heard through the panel process, we as officers weren't satisfied with the evidence that they'd provided, and a number of other expert witnesses also had pointed that out. So we'll have to wait and see what the panel, the advisory committee recommends to the minister on that. But effectively, they're extending into the floodplain.
Any questions from Mr. Columbus? Councillors? Councillor Stephen.
Angela, we understand we used the same lawyers at the panel that we used at the North East Link panel, and it was 20 days of hearings, which is a very long and intensive panel. Could you just explain the connection of this site to the North East Link? Should we view it as sort of part of that whole proposal? And why was it such a big, intense process? I mean, 20 days of hearings. We must have spent a lot of money having lawyers battling it out for 20 days to come up with a final position of please don't do this. So 20 days of debate about something we don't want to happen now. So is there any rough estimate also as to how much we've spent on this process, particularly through the panel, but also more broadly just over the many years this has been on foot?
I'd have to take the budget issue on notice. I haven't got that at hand, but it was significant, as you could imagine. In terms, the first part of your question was its relationship to the North East Link. So as I suggested, it is important in the context of the whole Yarra River corridor. There's also in providing sort of connections along the river with the open space network. So when we started the discussions with the proponent some time ago, that was one of our key objectives, to try to open up the land as much as possible for public use. So that is one of the positives that they presented to the panel, that they were effectively advising the panel or the advisory committee that they would effectively give the majority of the floodplain, which is currently the golf course, to a public entity, whether that's council or Parks Victoria. So that is consistent with the submission we put into the North East Link to try to maximise open space and minimise the impact of the North East Link, to improve connectivity along the river, as I said. And with the Sonico site, again, the importance of that site moving forward, to try to retain some jobs there as well.
Just a question on the other key abutting neighbour, the Heidi Art Gallery, which obviously is owned by the state. And I acknowledge the CEO of Heidi, Tim Sligo, is in the gallery this evening. My understanding is that the North East Link proposal, particularly the locking off of the Banksia Street access, almost leaves Heidi as a bit of an island. It sort of really does hamper its expansion options. I know Heidi's a community partner of ours, which we'll be talking about later this evening. Do you have a view or any insights you can share on the importance of this site potentially for Heidi's future, whether there's expansion possibilities or whether this potential development, if we do get the full $200 million residential development, are there issues with Heidi's shared access? Does it sort of box them in or hem them in to a degree? Just give us an overall view of the strategic situation with Heidi as a key neighbour to this site.
Yeah, the advisory committee certainly considered those issues following the submissions from a number of parties, including council. And I think you'll note in our submission that we've effectively said, there is an issue with access into Heidi and into the country club site in future, should it be developed, and that further work is needed there. And we've effectively reserved our position on that to the Roads Authority, so effectively Vic Roads, the Department of Transport, and basically saying that further work needs to be done there. The only other comment I'll make in terms of the interface with Heidi, again from day one, we were keen to have the site in some way recognise sort of the cultural significance of that area, especially given its proximity to Heidi, and encourage the proponents to talk to Heidi and see what could be done to maximise that sort of community benefit that I mentioned, to provide the strategic justification that officers would need to recommend to council, or to the minister, that we would support an amendment. So those discussions, my understanding, progressed with Heidi, but at the time of the panel, it was all removed from the table, so we weren't privy to any further details.
Final question. So the federal government has made a commitment of $1.75 billion to the North East Link project, which is largely untied. It's a $1.75 billion contribution to a $15 billion project. Is the Yarra Valley Country Club site, in your view, closely associated enough or in proximity to the broader North East Link project that it would be credible for the federal government or the local member, the incoming member, the current member for Menzies to take a position along the lines of spending some of that $1.75 billion on securing an outcome at the Yarra Valley Country Club site would be a credible or sensible use of federal government monies being contributed to the North East Link if it was, for instance, able to help facilitate maybe an expansion of Heidi, securing of 15 hectares of new open space for the Manningham community, those sort of positive outcomes without the council itself or the state necessarily having to write a big cheque to secure such an outcome?
Look, a case could be mounted that land is significant and does relate to the North East Link, especially in the context of the loss of open space that Manningham will experience, especially along parts of the Eastern Freeway and with the proposed new bus interchanges. So, we will see a reduction in open space. So, some investment there, government investment to return as much of that land as back to community purposes. An argument could be formed in that way.
Thank you, Mr. Columbus. Any councillors have questions for Mr. Columbus? Councillor my apology. And Councillor Kleinert.
Thank you. Can you just clarify for me with regards to page 46, 290, a proposed 2% base requirement for affordable housing is, miserably. It's out of step with the current fair expectations for redevelopment site like this. So our strategy, our affordable housing strategy 2010-2020 is a minimum of 5%?
That's correct.
In the likes of developments which are quite large like Doncaster Hill is 10%.
That's
and
right.
So did they change this parameter in this panel? Because I always thought that on the table in previous discussions that the affordable housing percentage was actually above the minimum. So did they change that, or was that always like that?
I suppose there was a gentleman's agreement that they would seek to provide 5%. So it was certainly officers' understanding that the proposal would include 5% affordable housing. How that took shape was to be resolved. But the documentation that was submitted to the advisory committee previously and the current advisory committee was lacking in that detail, and it sort of transpired through the process that they had reduced that offer to 2%, which council officers clearly objected to.
Okay, and then page 13 in other matters, DELP's part submission acknowledges an oversight of identifying the land at 203 Bulleen Road as a development opportunity, and it's marked up. Draft of the framework plan has indicated the inclusion of that site within the key site table on 49. Sorry, I'm reading really fast, but I'm not quite Can you just elaborate and just explain?
I might have to take that one on notice. I can't picture what site that address is, so yeah, I'm happy to take that on notice.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Laura May.
Thank
Your
you.
brief, please.
What has been the history of residency on the Yarra River side of Templestowe Road? I guess how dense, how much is it fit for residency, and what have been the consequences of living on that side? I guess flooding wise.
Yeah, only part of the site is. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. Where the current sort of car parks are and the clubhouse, they're not affected by the current flooding controls. So that area is developable now, subject to appropriate, rezoning to allow residential development or mixed-use development, whatever it might be. But as I said earlier, what they're proposing is to move the line and to extend into the floodplain. So that we felt wasn't adequately demonstrated through the process. Look, in principle, you could get a residential, a very attractive residential development there with a high amenity. But for all the reasons outlined in our submission, we, on balance, objected to it because we felt it wasn't properly sort of executed the way they went forward.
Is that okay? Yeah. Any councillor have any questions for Mr. Columbus? If no, and Councillor Stephen Main, as the mover of the item, would you like to speak for the motion?
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. Yes, I would like to speak in favour of the officer recommendation that we note the very comprehensive submission that our lawyers put together for the final consideration of the panellists, and also do some preliminary work on future options in terms of the public open space. I remember having my first ever game of golf in Year 7 with a school colleague called Wayne Stoll at the Yarra Valley Country Club back in 1983, I think it was. I think it would be a bit of a shame to lose a very affordable, publicly accessible 9-hole golf course as part of this proposal. But the golf, or the future use of the open space, is actually a bit of a secondary issue. I guess the real issue here, in my mind, is this a suitable site for a $200 million residential development? Quite an intense residential development involving potentially hundreds of dwellings. I think early versions were looking at more than 300 dwellings on a very sensitive site abutting the floodplains and the Yarra River corridors. I think anyone who's seen the sites coming out of New South Wales in recent days would learn the lesson about extreme caution in any form of residential development near existing floodplains. So the idea that we would support a rezone that encroaches a residential development into an existing floodplain in the current context, I find, to put it politely, an overreach by the proponent. Now the proponent is, I think, Mr. Bruce Matheson, a very well-known billionaire, Australia's largest pokies mogul, has a big joint venture with Woolworths where he owns, I think, roughly 14.6% of a joint venture called Endeavour Group, which owns the largest portfolio of pubs and pokies pubs in Australia. I think over 300 pubs, and 82 of them are in Victoria. But this particular site is different from that because Mr. Matheson owns 100% of it personally. So it's a separate site from the Endeavour Group joint venture with Woolworths. So if you look at the Shopping Town Hotel, the Doncaster Hotel, or the Manningham Club, they're all part of the Woolworths joint venture. This site is 100% Mr. Matheson's site, and it does have pokies as well. And I think it is one of the best parts of this proposal is that if it does go ahead, the residential development will see poker machines leave that venue, and I think there would be a significant community benefit from that, and I absolutely note the proponents' stressing of that point. I think that we need to stiffen the politics a little bit around this. I think it's been probably too long since this whole proposal came to a public open council meeting for a debate and a decision. So The quite forceful final submission by the lawyers has all been done under delegation, effectively. So where the officers, the council effectively had some briefings, gave some sort of indications, but not particularly open formal votes to go along with the process. The minister reached in and started this process. So this wasn't a council formally asking for a potential rezone of this site. This was an owner, a Matheson-driven process whereby the minister said, yes, we will do that. And I think it is worth noting in passing that Mr Matheson's partners in this project are, I think it's called Linked Solutions, which is a joint venture between our former Mayor, Charles Pick, and the former Mayor of Port Phillip, Darren Ray. So I think it is appropriate that Councillor Goff has declared a conflict, because we all know Mr Pick, but I think Mr Goff probably knows him better than some of us. So I think that needs to be put on the table around the sensitivities of this particular site and the outcomes. But overall, I think it's good to have some transparency about our position. I hope the Minister, by the deadline of April 14, chooses not to proceed with the amendment, as we are recommending, and I'd love to see an outcome that can accommodate Heidi's expansion plans and deliver a great outcome on the public open space.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Would Councillor Lang like to speak?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to encourage fellow councillors to be in favour of the officer recommendation. There is a concern with the expansion of residential development in such a sensitive and highly valued river valley landscape, such as the Yarra Valley Golf Course site. Our existing Manningham planning schemes do seek to protect and restrict the intrusion of built form in this significant environmental, ecological and cultural land. Therefore, I seek our council to support the officer's recommendation, which is sought that the proposed amendment has effective measures to ensure that this open space landscape is transferred back to public ownership in a suitable condition and achieves public value, and achieves a long-held strategic planning objective to provide continuous public access along our whole Yarra River corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Anyone like to speak against the motion? Anyone like to speak to the motion? Councillor Del Monte.
Thank you. I know a lot's been said, so I'll be very short. We've heard from Councillor Lang and Councillor Mayne. I think it's important to say that Manningham is going to be significantly impacted for a number of years by the North East Link, and Manningham will lose a lot of its open space and its green space, and not just, as Angela said, around the Park and Ride, but all along Bulleen Road, all the way through up to Nillumbik and Darebin. And a lot of us live in Manningham because it is where the city meets the country, and it sounds trite, but it's a reason that we moved here. So there are many technical reasons why we applaud the officers for stating that this should not proceed, but I think at the heart of it is the reason why we love Manningham, and we should be protecting our open spaces. Yes, we should be balancing it with responsible development and growth, but we need to protect these spaces, and we need to give them to the public. We need to give them to the community. So I do think it's a responsibility of us to uphold that value. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Del Monte. Anyone want to speak to the motion? If none, I put the motion. All in favour? It passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Now, before we proceed to the next item, can officer bring our mayor and Councillor Goff back to the chamber? Thank you.
Thank you. So we move on to 10.2, Youth Advisory Committee. Do I have a mover? Councillor Laura Main.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. Councillor Laura Main, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes. Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's encouraging that council is taking the initiative to form a youth advisory committee and taking more of an interest in younger people's perspectives and insights on council-related issues. The purpose of this youth advisory committee will to be consult with young people about council plans and strategies, as well as seek views on issues that affect young people, and feed this back to council to influence decision-making and priorities. Once formed, I'm sure this will be a great asset to council and will provide great long-term future insights, as young people are the most affected by the future, as well as allowing council to give back to young people with a great learning experience about the processes of being a committee, which is often hard to come by as a younger person. I wish the officers luck in initiating their series of youth-focused groups and forums, and they find the most effective structure for the Youth Advisory Committee and its scope. And I look forward to hearing about the progress.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Councillor Chen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would love to speak for the motion. And Mr. Mayor, young are the now and the future. We all know that. And many councils have consultative committee and to consult and engage with council, with people. And in Manningham, we have youth services operated by Eastern Access Community Health under a service contract arrangement. And council does not actually have a committee structure to directly engage with our young people. But just like other community members, young people have opinions on all issues that affect their community, not just youth issues. So young people's participation can enrich council planning and service delivery, and the function across economic, social, and cultural and environmental dimensions. So, Mr. Mayor, young people are entitled to be given responsibilities and opportunities, and council has a leadership role with young people in the community. So therefore, a youth advisory committee structure makes perfect sense. This allows young people to be generally engaged. So if we have the youth committee established this year, it will enable council to understand new and unique perspectives, make better and more informed decisions, provide more suitable services and events, and strengthen, most importantly, strengthen community connections. So our young people will have the opportunity to influence council's decisions and decision makings and priority setting. So again, I seek my fellow councillors' support to this motion. That is a must for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everyone knows that our youth are our next generation. They are our next generation of leaders. They are our next generation of committees. They are our next generation of who will be educating the future generations. The education and the information and the experiences that our youth have will shape our future generations. Therefore, I wholeheartedly recommend the implementation of Manningham's Youth Advisory Committee. I ask my fellow councillors to support this recommendation and also to engage, and I also commend council for their engagement of youth, our youth, Manningham youth, in the way that the committee will be set up, because it is important to ask our young people how they would prefer to participate, have a broad spectrum of the youth that would participate, and to receive the youth's feedback on our policies, as well as giving them the opportunity and learning of information, advising others on the information they receive and forming their opinions. It is also recommended that young people who have been nominated as part of our previous community panel recommendation be invited to participate, which I fully support. All the benefits addressed in the report value our youth which values our communities, which values our generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Are there any other speakers either for or against the motion? There being no other speakers, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 10.3, proposal to enter into new community partnership grants. Do I have a mover?
So moved, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have a seconder?
I second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, this is a fairly non-controversial ho-hum motion, simply seeking to align our most substantial grant-giving program with our current council 4-year cycle and our community overall strategic plans for the community. So the multi-year agreements that we came up to with a range of our wonderful community groups in Manningham were due to expire now, and we would ordinarily be running a grants program for these community partnerships along with our small grants program and our one-off grants program, which we are currently running at the moment. But the officers have come up with what I think is an eminently sensible and non-controversial proposal, which is to simply roll the existing agreements for 6 months. So it's pretty small beer all up, these arrangements. No organisation can get more than $50,000 a year. And obviously, if you think about our couple of $1 billion balance sheet and our over $100 million a year in rates revenue, it's absolutely tiny. It's a drop in the bucket. So the proposal is that a range of groups, and I will mention them, some of our great community houses, such as Pines Learning, Park Orchards Community House and Learning Centre, the Warrandyte Neighbourhood House, the Wonga Park Community Cottage, and Living and Learning at Adjani, Inc. All of them are proposed to receive, if we vote in favour of this non-controversial item tonight, another $25,000 for the next 6 months, which is just an extension, a 6-month extension of their $50,000 a year arrangement. It is absolutely bog standard across councils in Victoria to have funding partnerships with our wonderful community houses. I'm not aware of any councils that have said, you know, what on earth are we doing funding these wonderful community houses? And some of the training programs that they deliver are quite amazing. I'd make the point that many of them are run by women, that many of these programs and training certificates that they offer up are for the benefit of women with childcare and these sorts of certificates. So I think that with council's history of a bit of gender bias in the way that we fund organisations, that this is an absolute no-brainer, that we'd simply roll over these agreements and continue to fund these excellent organisations in the way we have for the past 3 years. And if we want to make any overall big picture strategic changes to the arrangements, doing that in 6 months' time, when we come to the longer term new partnership arrangements, that's the time to have the debate. That's the time to do any structural changes. But given the wonderful work they do, I would caution doing any substantial changes to these excellent community partnerships.
Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also encourage the Mayor and fellow councillors to support this recommendation. The proposed new short-term extensions to the Community Partnership Grant are proposed to do two main things: align with our future community partnership grants in council priorities with our council strategic plan and our healthy city strategy, and also to enable the delivery of programs and activities similar to those that have been similar to the current agreements where organisations have been unable to deliver their programs due to COVID-19 restrictions. Community partnership grants are offered to any community-based non-for-profit organisation who deliver programs and initiatives that support our Manningham residents. This is done to support and strengthen our community where they live, work or study. Our Manningham community houses use our council grant money to provide valuable programs for our community. They do this in order to have affordable rates to their programs, affordable charges, and they also join together to put on free events for our community. It is now more than ever that our communities, residents, support organisations and social groups need our financial support, and this provides for the needs and social connection of our communities. We are not offering any more COVID relief funding, therefore our grants is all these communities have. It is up to us to support our communities through these programs. Some neighbourhood houses financially struggle as they do not receive other funding or education grant opportunities. It is therefore our duty as council to provide grant opportunities for all non-for-profit organisations to be able to deliver programs that support our healthy city strategy and also support and strengthen our community and therefore our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Are there any speakers against the motion? Councillor Diamante.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I want to acknowledge that the core role of the council, core role of any council, is to support the most vulnerable in our community. And grants such as the community partnership grants are an important way of providing this support. And I look forward to the new grant program being funded at the beginning of next year. And I absolutely agree, Councillor Mayne, this should be and is a standard practice across councils, and we support that. I also note, though, the importance of council managing its expenditure and ensuring that every dollar we spend we have outcomes and that those outcomes are aligned with our priorities. And those priorities, as I said, include supporting our most vulnerable, and it also includes programs that promote good health, that promote ongoing learning, that Councillor Lang talked about, that addresses isolation and all these other programs that make Manningham a great place to live. But we have a limited bucket of money. And while I'd love to spend it on everything, and indeed I think it's easy to be generous when it's not our money we're talking about here. And I would like to point out that this interim funding totals $245,000. So it is a significant amount of money that we're talking about. That a large percentage we have to recover through rates. So I think we need to be very responsible about how that money is spent. I think any interim funding that we agree to spend should be aligned to those priorities of helping the vulnerable in our community. And I think that we should be prioritising those programs that directly support the most vulnerable, and where we don't, and if they did not have this funding, that the programs they're rolling out would actually be significantly impacted. I can't say that the existing partner organisations meet this criteria. So on this note, I don't support this motion, and I would like further information on the outputs of the interim funds to all the partner organisations before we make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Diamante. Are there any speakers for? Councillor Kleiner.
Thank you. I'll speak to this this motion. So currently, the communities. Well, first of all, for a controversial item, it's becoming quite controversial. This is an extension of just 6 months, based on the fact that we've got these groups that have been funded, and they are currently running programs that are identified under our current Healthy City Strategy, which currently is coming to its end and will be hopefully endorsed. Say it, Councillor Mayne. I need coffee and I need oh, look, you know what I'm talking about. When we get the new council plan, we get the new Healthy City Strategy, we'll have new priorities, and then we make decisions based on that. Currently, how do these groups identify with not wasting ratepayers' money, which is, may I just say, all our money, because we all pay rates, and we take that seriously. So the programs that they are running, especially in COVID, considering that we still are, as the Premier of the state says, that we're still under
Martial law.
Yes, as some would say, martial law, state of emergency. So, we're bound by what is happening still today with regards to COVID. So what do they currently do under the current funding plan? They strengthen community connections and a sense of belonging through cultural and social inclusion. That's currently our Healthy City strategy. They enhance the health and wellbeing of Manningham community. Also, what is under our Healthy City strategy. They provide affordable community programs by specialist groups or organisations in response to demonstrated community needs or service gaps, more so relevant than ever before. Support a safer and more resilient community, and they encourage the collaboration between council, groups and organisations for the benefit and the community. I have to say, there are some parts of Councillor De Monte's speech that I agree with. When we have our new council priorities set, when we have our new Healthy City strategy, which is a requirement under the state government legislation, then we will have these new priorities that then the groups can come back to. And yes, conversations do need to be had, how we use our money, our rates. But for an extension of 6 months for them to finish off, for those priorities to end, which are current priorities, I think it would be remiss of us to not allow that to go ahead. So I'm in favour of this motion, the officer's recommendation. I think it's very good. I think it's very clean, and it means that we'll have new agreements for all our community groups as we go into our new council plan and our new Healthy City strategy 21-25. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aquarina. Are there any other speakers against?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask questions? Because I just feel confused.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, we give the interim funding. Have we assessed the need, or have those organizations requested the funding? Or we just presume that because we as a councillor, we found you before, I assume that you are entitled to the funding for the following 6 months. And given this extremely difficult situation, because I'm very mindful that I can remember we tried a lot for our small business to get the funding, and they had very limited funding eventually to apply for to improve their IT facilities, IT platform. So I'm confused whether they have actually requested the funding for the following 6 months, or we just presume that I have the money, council has the money, I can give it to you now.
Thank you. So I'll refer that question through the CEO.
I might ask Mr. Karamas to come forward and respond to that question, Mayor.
Thank you for the question. No, we haven't gone back and analysed, the financial position of those organisations. The intent was to enable council to take that strategic approach that's been discussed, is to effectively roll over the current arrangements for 6 months, and then at the end of that, when once council has confirmed its priorities for the next 4 years, that we will align the program at that point. So the opportunity for that more strategic approach would come once we've done this. So this is really just a holding pattern, a once-off, to enable that more strategic approach to happen.
Sorry, the specific question was, have they asked for?
No, they haven't asked. No.
Do you ask?
So they haven't asked. We just go ahead with the 6 months funding for them without asking, without any assessment due process. That is my question.
That's correct. Because on the basis as we've previously funded them, so it's to minimise the impact on our community partners. That was the approach that officers believe is the most appropriate way forward.
Thank you.
And I have a second question, would you mind?
Sure.
Mr. Mayor?
It's probably for Angelo again, but yeah.
And I'm curious about the 5 community centers. Some community centers are quite community house and learning centers. Some are quite small, some are quite large. I have a look of the report. They all received $25,000. And is there a rationale? Because it's very interesting because we have 10 organizations. 5 are community house and learning centers. The others just basically offer free advice. So I'm just curious about the rationale. If we give the same amount of money to those learning centers, they are different in their sizes and enrollments.
Thank
And
you.
again, have we assessed that? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. Look, no, we haven't. As I mentioned previously, the intention was effectively to roll over so that no one is disadvantaged through the process while we realign our strategic priorities and the program moving forward.
Thank you.
Is there any other speakers against? Councillor Chen?
It is not a popular thing to say I against to give people money, but I mean that as a responsible ratepayer and responsible councillor, just to be mindful of people's money, including my money, and I will be struggle to say I support the motion, and I agree that if I agree to, I'm quite happy to give every single cent to every non-for-profit organization if we can afford it. Why not? But I also very mindful that during COVID, we had many people lost their job. And I have a look of I actually collected some information and from the learning centers and look at their programs. They're all very nice. But I just can't help to think of those people, low-income family or medium-age husband, wife, lost their job, and they probably wouldn't have any job keeper. They probably wouldn't qualify to job seekers, and they have young children at home. They want to go to school. They want to have excursion. They would love to have after-school activities, which they can't have. I'm very mindful that the low-income Australians, especially and the unemployed, for instance, they are struggling. I have a search for some information. They are struggling to live on $220 a week to survive, just to survive. So when I look at the programs and they charge money for a course, and it struck me a lot. And I don't know how they could afford for those money or those courses just for the affordable family, affordable people who could afford to the house, or they just have a lot of time to enjoy their life and to make social connection, while the people at the very vulnerable level of our community just couldn't afford it. The priority for them is just put the plate of bread, lunch, meals on the table. That is their priorities. And now we are giving $25,000 without assessing the need and say, this is the money, go ahead with the 6 months, and this is priority. Because from my experience, every single organization who apply for the funding, they all tick the box. We are social connectivity and healthy city strategy. You find that they all meet the criteria, but the important thing is here tonight, the priority. Look after the low-income Australian in our community and just give them a chance to have a free access to the course they can afford to as a leisure, as an extra, and just rather than they are thinking of putting the meals in front of on the table for their family. So for that reason, I support Councillor Del Monte. And for the bottom of my heart, I would love to give them money, but I also need to think of our low-income Australian in our community and those very vulnerable people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Are there any other speakers for the motion. Councillor Lightbody.
Yeah, I would just like to say that what we're deciding on tonight is extending the current funding arrangements until our new priorities are decided on. And until we do decide on those new strategic policy priorities, our current priorities still stand. And I think, well, I believe that we should be continuing to support the programs that underpin and work towards those priorities that currently remain. As we come out of the COVID, I think these programs are, well, they're affordable, sometimes free, and essential to reconnecting and rebuilding our communities. It's been said that we're not assessing the organisations for this funding, but we're still expecting the current arrangements to continue. And if we do end this funding for the next 6 months, these programs that many people participate in and rely on may also cease to happen. So that's why I'm speaking in favour of this motion.
Are there any other speakers against the motion? I will speak against the motion then. I have deep concerns about the process of approving $250,000 in grants that were clearly sunsetted. We clearly flagged to the community and to all the recipients, is my understanding, that we would be adopting a new policy which would require far more scrutiny and far more alignment with our goals. So on that basis, I can't support items C and D out of the motion. I agree with A and B and E in terms of deferring the community grants program, but I don't believe there's been enough assessment done to this point. We don't know if these, it's quite possible, as many businesses have benefited from JobKeeper. Some of these businesses might be, because they are businesses, might have been, some might be beneficiaries of that. They may not have any need at all for this funding. But what strikes me about, in particular, about the 5 learning centres is there's very little that I've got information that I have here in the report about the programs that they provide. That the programs that we subsidise, the $25,000 per learning centre. Whereas I got a fair idea when I look at the other organisations about the sort of programs, and I say, well, yeah, that does align. My issue is that we are rolling over a significant amount of funds to organisations who haven't asked for it. We are assuming that they need it. We have no visibility of that. We haven't asked for any visibility of that. And I would foreshadow a motion to pass A, B and E and to come back with more information regarding the accountability of those programs that we are proposing to support. The alignment of those programs with the community benefit and public value benefit. That's my position, and I can't sit here in all good conscience, and say that we have taken enough time to understand the implications of whether this is good value, whether is this a good spend of ratepayers' money. So with that, I will close my argument and I will open up to anyone who would like to speak for the motion. Councillor Laura May.
Thank you. So I'd speak for the motion mainly for the procedure of aligning with the Healthy City strategy, as well as I don't see the need to use more resources to then assess all of this. And also just, I guess, a comment on community houses, especially in the climate of COVID, where there's loneliness. It definitely impacts like the elderly community, and we've talked so much about how like that's such a priority. I see this as a positive, like enhancing that, and also an educational program. It's specifically in this COVID lonely environment. That's my comment. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers against?
I'd like to speak about the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And look, I rise to speak, and I've listened to all people touting their various points of view around this table. A couple of things have come extremely apparent to me, even just listening to the debate, but with it, and that is that there is a difficulty in how we are processing something. There's a huge assumption that we are just going to continue on. Doesn't matter what other submissions come in. It doesn't matter what other organisations are around. We're just going to roll over contracts that are fixed for a certain amount of time without even going out to expressions of interest from other people. We're just going to roll them over and they're permanent. And if we're permanently funding programs all the time, we haven't assumed that the programs that they are running are programs that we actually want to run, then I think it is a little bit of a waste. Now, whose money is it? It is the owners of property that are taxed on a property tax in Manningham that pay for this. That is our way of raising money. Okay? So these are all the people that live out there that own a property and pay rates to Manningham City Council. You are funding all of these organisations. I'm not saying that they're a bad one. I'm not saying they're good. What I'm saying is that perhaps we should be thinking very carefully of what we fund, why we fund it, and are we going to automatically deem that every organisation has this much money every year in the next X amount of years just because they are those organisations and not have other organisations in there. We cannot be funding every non-for-profit organisation in Manningham. There are so many non-for-profit organisations all doing good things, but history tells us that these are certain organisations that have been around that we have funded. Having said that, I think it really needs for us as a council to really go into our grants and work out what and why at a deeper level. I think that is extremely important for us. And to whether we just fund the capital of those organisations and not the running costs of those organisations. I think, in my opinion, it's up for council to actually provide facilities for community and for community organisations, and it's up to the community to run their programs. But I think we have a responsibility for that. But I'm tired on this one, Mr Mayor, because there will be perhaps an assumption, and I assume that these organisations may be on an assumption that unfortunately our officers were on the assumption that it's going to be all rolled over and all the same and it's ho-hum and we all just give away money at local government. Well, we don't just give away money at local government. We do need to responsibly do something. And I believe, look, in one part, whether COVID has made a difference to this, we've had a lot of time to be able to contact these people via Skype or whatever, Zoom or whatever. We've had officers been able to do that. We've been able to do that work and talk to these people. We've known that it's been coming to an end. And by the way, it gets to this particular month and it comes to us to say, oh, well, we haven't gone out and spoken to them, therefore we're going to have to do something. So are we doing it in a rush there at the end because of that? I don't know. But I also think that it's a little bit unfair for organisations that may have assumed that there is going to be continuing funding for the remainder of this year. And I know that it came out, and have we done our due diligence before this has even come to us? And from what I've heard here is that, I don't know, perhaps we just need to postpone this item for a month or so and get a lot more information back here to the chamber and to us. We do it for a month. If this item gets up in a month with that thing, it doesn't make any difference to that because there's still plenty of time to do it all. But I would like to get some more feedback into the processes and why, at this particular juncture of time, that without going to expressions of interest from anyone in our community, that we actually do put the money up. So, Mr Mayor, I will move that we defer this item for 1 month.
following this motion or right now?
Right now, that's a procedural motion.
Do I need I'll ask for advice from governance. Before I have speakers, do I need a seconder for the amendment? So it's a procedural.
No, just the deferment.
It is moving to defer.
Yeah, but that's still an alternative motion for that debate. Can we finish dealing with the motion at hand first? See if we need
I'll wait. Through the debate, so you would like to move an amendment?
If I don't get a seconder, I don't get a seconder.
An amendment, Councillor Goff, to defer this
For one meeting.
for till the 25th of April, I think.
The next council.
To the next council meeting.
Difference.
I will have to second.
Can I please just get some clarification? Is that to defer it for a month so that the officers then go and get the right amount of data that we're asking is how this money is to
be spent? Yes.
If we can amend the amendment with
Yeah.
that clarification.
Yes, that's all the amendment is to defer for that month.
Okay, so we have a seconder. So I have Councillor Goff moving the amendment. I have Councillor Chen seconding it. Now I've got it's not usual that I get in this situation. Do I have a debate? Does Councillor Goff now get another 4 minutes to talk about the amendment? Okay, Councillor Goff.
Mr. Mayor, on a motion, I believe that on a motion of deferral, there wasn't that debate. Can I just get that
I'll get
clarified?
clarification. New territory. Well, it's a question of whether it's a procedural motion or not. It's not a procedural because it's a deferral. It's an amendment to the motion, is what I'm hearing.
Well, it's an alternative.
No, it's not. It's a deferral of the motion.
Okay, we'll wait for the proper advice. I'll grab a drink of water. Who was sitting here?
I'm glad this is not controversial, council,
Look, if it's my call, I believe it's an amendment.
Well, I disagree, Mr. Mayor, but I dissent from the rule.
Regardless, we can go through that. Let's assume it's an amendment.
It's a procedural motion.
Sorry, I'll just wait until I've got. Governance. Do you have an opinion, or shall I?
The motion put. That's the procedural motion. Not introducing a new thing and then putting it straight away. We can't do that.
There are a number of different procedural motions that are included in the governance rules. I'm not sure that it's intended that they be used as a way to dispose of a matter that's already on the table, which is why I would consider it more to be an amendment rather than a procedural motion.
Yep. So I'll take it as an amendment. So now we start again on the amendment. Okay, Councillor Goff on the amended motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll stand up and say there is a motion before the floor. I'm not wishing to amend the motion that is on the floor. I am asking for a deferral of the consideration of that motion for 1 month. That is what I moved. That is a procedural motion. Now, if you want to overrule that, you may do so as running the meeting. I am saying to you that I disagree with that. It is a procedural motion. And if I'm getting nods that it's a procedural motion, then the procedural motion is put, it is voted on. If that is defeated, then that is fine.
Okay, I will just ask for clarification.
Well, if it's a deferral, if it's a procedural motion,
Yeah, that's right.
Mr.
Because,
I'm not changing anything. But that's in
councillors,
our
councillors,
rules.
just wait. I'm just going to wait for a few more minutes until we get a bit more advice.
Garage is trying to check from our perspective. Debate on the motion has commenced, and for that reason, it's a variation to the officer's recommendation that is on the table, and should be debated as part of the as part of the variation.
If you want to say something, Mr. CEO.
Just wait. I'll just make sure that. I'll wait for him. I'll refer it to the CEO.
So, through you, Mayor, I'm of the view that the governance laws allows it to be moved. It's a procedural motion at any time. A deferral, it's stated as a procedural motion. So, my view is that that motion just should be put and voted on.
Will then, having a mover and a seconder, I will put the procedural motion of deferment till the next council meeting. Are you satisfied with that?
That was the
Councillor Goff? Okay, those in favour of deferring? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and those against? 5. Great. So the procedural motion has been defeated. We will now resume debate on the original motion from Councillor May, which is the officer's recommendation, in essence. Councillor Goff, I think you ran out of time. So now I'm up to speakers 4. Actually, I think everyone's had a say, which means it must be back to Councillor Main to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I just encourage us to not sweat the small stuff. 250k when you've got 65 million in the bank is not worth this fight for a 6-month rollover. We haven't put our best foot forward tonight. There's close to 10 of our most wonderful community organisations out there who will watch this and say, what on earth is going on? Are we about to get defunded? We didn't know anything about this. We just simply were told there was a little rollover and the main game is in 6 months. So what are we pulling the rug for, having given them no notice? We're going to pull the rug. And I just call on my colleagues to think about the final vote here. I'm going to call a division, and we need to send a message to the community that we can be sensible governors. And we're not going to pick fights with people needlessly, unsettle funding. I mean, what if someone loses their job because we pull the funding? How's that going to help? What if they have to put up the price of fees? We've talked about affordability of fees. If we pull the rug on a trainer that looks after primarily women in low-paid jobs and we pull their funding, we get blamed for them putting up their fees as having to find new revenue sources. So, councillors, we also need to think about our ward colleagues. Is it really right to try and defund an organisation or 3 organisations in a colleague's ward when none of these organisations are in your ward? So I think we need to think about the optics of this, how we're respecting the community.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. This is to refute what has been said. It is not to introduce new argument to a debate.
Thank you.
What is happening is introduction of new argument.
Yes, thank you. I agree with that. Councillor Main, could you restrict it to...
dealing with issues that have been raised. Yep, okay. There was a comment made about the fact that we fund every not-for-profit in Manningham. We fund well under less than 10% of the not-for-profits in Manningham. Most of these not-for-profits are in our buildings. So if they're not going to function economically with financial support in our buildings, who is going to fund them? It's not as if they've got other funders. If we want some red meat from cutting costs, Heidi's in the gallery tonight. They've been defunded for 6 months. So there is some red meat for our Liberal friends who may want to get some cost savings happening. There is some red meat. Heidi's not getting a renewal of their 30K. They've got to live off last year's money and then put their best foot forward in September.
Councillor, that's new. I'm going to pull you up on that.
All right.
Because that was not discussed at all, the funding, as I recall it.
Well, who we are funding is being discussed. And we have cut someone's funding, and people are suggesting that we haven't. We have. I'm refuting.
You've got 30 seconds to finish.
All right. So I just think we also need to support the officers. One of the number one rules in local government for me is rely on the professionals, support the officers. What sort of a message does it send to get an officer report come up and suddenly we go, no, we know better. We're going to do this. We're going to reach in and we're going to say yes to you, no to you. We're going to pick winners and losers. Cause consternation in the community. So councillors, when it comes to the final vote, I just plea with you to send a message of unity, that we know that there's 5 numbers in favour, so get behind it and then we can have this debate in 6 months' time.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Before I put the vote, I'll just ask for clarification. Councillors are allowed to ask more questions?
No.
Not after closing. No. Thank you. Thank you. I will therefore put the vote. Those in favour? Against? Okay, we will move on to item 11, City Services. Oh, there are no City Service reports. Item 12, Shared Services. There are no Shared Service reports. 13, Chief Executive Officer. And I apologise, my papers are now out of order. Ah, yes, our favourite topic. Thank you. 13.1, Determination of Mayoral and Council Allowances. Do I have a mover? Councillor Mayne, Stephen Mayne. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goff. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, yeah, just on the papers, I think we should support the officer recommendation on this one. We've had, I think, only two submissions, so there hasn't been a lot of community backlash. I think for me, the most compelling argument is the fact that all of our neighbours are operating at the level that is proposed in the officer recommendation. And so we've actually been quite unusual in operating at a different level. That decision to do that was commendable in the midst of COVID. Many tens of thousands of dollars were saved for the ratepayers. If you also consider, I think, council expense claims in the latest quarterly report, they're going to finish maybe 70, 80, 100,000 below budget this year. I don't think there's a case that there's gross extravagance or comparative excessive pay relative to our neighbours. There's been a good, transparent community process. I commend the councillors 12 months ago for what they did in sending a really important message during COVID. I've seen many public companies do similar things where boards and CEOs took 3 months or 6 months pay cuts. I haven't seen anyone who's gone 12 months and beyond in that environment. And given the benchmarking study, I don't think that we should tell the community that we're worth less than our neighbours. And I think given that it's a drop in the bucket relative to the overall context of the organisation, we need a well-governed council. And I think that for me, it's awkward, and I wish we weren't having to do this, having to pass judgment on what ourselves and our colleagues are being paid. I'm pleased that this is the first and last time this will happen. It'll go to an independent tribunal coming up in the next 12 months. Look forward to this being taken out of our hands. But we've been put into the process here, not in our choosing in a sense. We've been through the process. We've spent time talking about it. We've had 2 community consultation processes. The officers have prepared a report. The officers have made a recommendation. I don't see the argument for rejecting the officer recommendation in the full context, particularly the benchmarking as to what happens in all of our neighbouring councils.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And this issue did come up about this time last year, as I recall. And it was postponed for the new council. Now, the thing is that I think the most important thing is that when you look at the benchmarks of the councils, and we do it for every other area of council operation, benchmarking across the board for every job in this organisation, as well as policies and other sorts of things we benchmark, and standards. Looking across the board, we have been since 2019, and I believe even a number of years beforehand, been at that level, but the Minister declared it in 2019 that we were in that group of councils. Those neighbouring groups of councils in that group are at the pay area that has been put down here on that, on this motion, and I believe that we need to be doing that as a council. The future of what those pays are going to be done by an independent organisation very, very soon. We don't know when that's going to be, but the base of whatever they're going to be looking at, and from whatever margins they will look at into the area in the sector of local government, it will be taken off that, and I believe that we need to be aligned with the other councils of the similar size, of the same order, into that pay area, because it will be taken out of our hands. I find it very interesting that state government rely on the federal government for getting their pay rise, and then as soon as that comes in, they get an automatic one up to their pay rise, basically. So the feds do all the hard work, and the states get a percentage of that, and they get it done very easily. At local government, we're not talking about a pay rise here. What we are talking about is the movement of Manningham and our pay from one level to the next. And I know that there are ranges in there, but they are from one level to a next, and we would be identifying with that.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Are there any speakers against the motion? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and fellow councillors. This one is a tricky one because it's actually my gut feeling that I feel uncomfortable about this one. It's not actually the evidence of my fellow councillors and Councillor Goff that just put forth very clear reasons for his opinion. Mayoral and councillors are entitled to receive an allowance while performing their duties. That is an uncomfortable position to be in, to say how much money you think you are worth. However, it is part of the job, or part of you in terms of performing your job. I welcome the independent remuneration tribunal who will determine mayoral and councillor allowances in the future, and I wish that that was occurring now. However, it is our obligations between a period of 6 months to make a general declaration of our mayoral and councillor allowances. With all the debates that have been on the table tonight, it has actually made me even more uncomfortable to make this determination, because I feel serving our community as elected representatives is an honour and a privilege. And our current allowance falls within our new category range. I totally acknowledge that we have moved from a Category 2 council to a Category 3 council due to our environmental, social, economic, cultural diversities, and within that Category 3, our allowance needs to fall within a Category 3 range. But our allowance does. So therefore, how can I have heard a whole lot of debates against not wanting to give organisations grants to actually help our vulnerable...
Point of order.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Point of order.
Point of order. Misrepresentation of what people have said on previous motions into this motion, and I don't believe that I did hear anyone say that people shouldn't get grants.
Councillor Lang, could you restrict the argument to the point at hand? Thank you.
I can. So therefore, I would just feel uncomfortable with the decision to determine my councillor allowance to increase, and as the current one fits within the declaration of a Category 3 allowance, I am against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Are there any speakers for the motion? Councillor Climate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You think that we'd be voting over an allowance that's, you know, thousands of dollars. Really, let's put some context into this, because many of our community have no idea. So many say to me, oh, I went to the office to see if you're in your office today. I don't have an office. They say, I see you all over the time. Oh my goodness, you're so busy. You're at this event, at this event, at this event. You know, when do you get time to do anything else? And I look and think, okay, so how many hours do I spend every week? How many hours do we spend every week? Because we're an unusual board setting. We're strategic framework policy makers. That's what we're doing around the table. We are on multiple community advisory groups, community groups, internal, external, as well as meetings that are called here and meetings that are called there, residential meetings that we go to willingly and happily, because that's what we signed up to do. And we take calls, I do, 7 days a week, sometimes on a Sunday night, even on a Saturday night, but I'll take them. I don't have to, I choose to, and sometimes I don't because I can't, but I always call back. We get emails. We're responding to emails. We're responding to texts all through the night. So let's put some context of what we're talking about. Should this allowance, which again, it's the state government, the minister's come to us and said, you're now in this category, now vote on it, and be like my fellow councillors have said, our neighbouring councils. So let's put some perspective. For a councillor, to $31,444. I'm not even going to talk about taking tax. Let's say it's tax-free, you're putting it in your pocket, right? Let's just say that, Councillor Goff, for, you know, the sake, because I'm not that good. I do run a business, multiple, so that will be taxed at a higher rate. Work that one out. So let's say it's tax-free, hypothetically. Let's talk hypothetically. Let's base it on 48 weeks, because some will like to go away, and if you go away, you might like to switch off your phone or your emails, and that's everyone's prerogative to have some downtime. So let's base that on 48 weeks. Let's base it on approximately 25 hours a week. Our agenda was light this week, 86 pages, plus all the attachments that go through, plus all the phone calls and text messages and the non-controversial items that we've been discussing for the last few days. You know, that takes time. Not to mention all the other groups and things that we've been part of. The going to the shop to get your milk that takes 45 minutes to get. So let's say 25 hours conservatively. Sometimes more, sometimes less, because we should be prepared for every meeting that we come to, should we not? So based on that, 48 weeks, 25 hours, it's $26.20. By the way, before tax. We're making decisions on $100 and something million budgets. What is it? $160 million budget, $2 billion in assets. Can I have an extension, please, Mr. Mayor? Do I have a mover?
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Seconder. Thank you.
We've got to vote.
Yeah, in favour of an extension. Yeah, done. Thank you.
I'll be very, very quick. 48 weeks, 25 hours, give or take, $26.20, yet we're making decisions on $180 million budgets, $2 billion of asset. We are not someone that goes and clocks on and clocks off and goes home and sleeps. Sometimes I don't sleep because I am worrying about the decisions that we've made tonight. I take every decision heavily, as we all do. We are a wonderful council. We are actually I think we're one of the highest functioning councils in Victoria, because we talk to each other, we respect each other, we care for each other, because we love the city that we live in. We care and we take our time to that. That's worth putting some very, very positive mindset. This is not a volunteer job, though I did think it is, and largely I have to say it is. But, you know, let's put some perspective to this, because we're only here for 4 years. Then some of us will move on. The minister is taking this away. Yes, it's the last time we vote on it. It will go to an external panel. Let's show that external panel that we work very, very hard for our community. We don't take this lightly.
Thanks, Councillor. Time. So, speakers against. Councillor Chen.
I
have prepared a lot, but I don't think that I need to repeat it. And basically just about the hard works we have been doing, and I totally agree with any single councillors and your hard work, and mine too. But the thing is, today we are talking about perception, and we are very honored. We moved from Category 2 councils to Category 3 councils last year. But our allowance, there is always a range for each category. And our allowance, even we were in Category 2, actually that is also within the Category 3 range. So once again, in this environment, I'm talking about perception. And I heard a lot about benchmarking. Whenever I heard about benchmarking, I always have a big question mark. Who do I benchmarking for? What criteria? What sort of items are we actually benchmarking? Or do we just pick around the surrounding, our neighboring councils, and then we compare? And then that is so-called benchmarking. I'm nervous about that benchmarking. So tonight, now, I heard about benchmarking again. I have to say, benchmarking, let's consider our economies of scale. Manningham is not on par with the 6 councils referenced in the report. They are receiving the top-end Category 3 allowance set by the Victorian government. Manningham is not identified as tourism locations in Melbourne. We do not have strong commercial industries activities, nor do we have any employment cluster if you want to do the benchmarking. Manningham's population, before I came here tonight, I did some benchmarking to get the statistics from ID, the public available site. Manningham's population, council's expenditure, revenue, they are all lower than any 6 of the councils. Also, don't forget that the economic impact of COVID-19 is still with us, and people still losing jobs. And now we said, well, we are Category 3, we should be on top of the range. I just feel, I agree with Councillor Lam. I can't look into my community's eyes, say that, well, we are at the top of the range, because if you compare benchmarking again, we can't compare with them. So for those reasons, I cannot support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Are there any other speakers for? Councillor Diamante.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when I campaigned, I actually thought we only got $6,000. I didn't do it for the money. I did it because I absolutely want to support the community. And that's still why I do it. When I had my first sort of session here and saw what we got paid, I thought, it didn't really make a difference. But I do support what Councillor Kleinert says, and the involvement, it is absolutely at least a minimum of 24 hours, but that's not really my argument. I think communities deserve a strong calibre of councillor on every council. If you look at any governance board, any board of director, non-executive directors get remunerated for the decisions they make, they get remunerated for the risks that they take, for that level of exposure, and we need good people on councils, and we need good women on councils, and we need good men on councils. And one of the councillors here, when we were first discussing allowances many weeks ago now, said we should be making a decision not for us, but actually for future councillors, because this may be the last chance when local government makes the determination on our allowance. It may be the last chance. So I agree with Councillor Kleinert. We do need to say, you know what, this is actually a really important role. We need to attract good calibre people to this job, not now, but every year, in the next 4 years and rolling over. And to make it worth the while of some people, yes, they do need some of that funding. As Councillor Chen said, there are a lot of people that aren't getting a lot of income but might want to be on council that have to take an extra dog. But you know what? If there is that remuneration here, it's going to attract better candidates, it's going to attract more community-minded people, and I personally think that's a positive. So I absolutely support the motion, particularly if we are forward-looking and want to build the calibre of councillors for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Diamante. Any other speakers against? Any other speakers to the motion, for or against? Councillor Lightbody.
I agree with everything that both Councillors Diamante and Councillor Kleiner said. And I think another issue about this is an issue about access. And I thought I'd present an example. Could a single mother running a household on her own income afford to be a councillor? Can she afford to put in all the hours? Can she afford to reduce her hours at other employment and still provide for her household? I think if you want to encourage all people to be interested in becoming a councillor and taking that position as the representative of their community, then we should not be putting them in a position where it's not financially viable for them. I think we should be putting them in a position where they will be appropriately reimbursed for the time that they do put in, for the hours that, as Councillor Kleiner mentioned, the community expects and sees that we all put in. And I think that's sort of the perspective we need to look, especially if we're looking towards for future councils. I know it is going to be taken, thankfully, out of our own hands. A decision on that could go anyway. It could freeze it. So I think there's lots of different perspectives we need to take into account. And I think a really important one is about ensuring that everyone in our community has that opportunity to be able to put their hand up to be a councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Does anyone else like to speak for the motion? Councillor Main, I think if you would like to close. I will put the motion. Those in favour? And those against? And carried. Thank you. Okay. So, item 13.2, informal meetings of councillors. Do I have a mover? Councillor Chen.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Laura May. I will put that to the floor. Those in favour? And that is carried. Items 13.3, documents for sealing, an alternative motion is attached. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Kleiner.
That the alternate motion be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. I will put that motion. Those in favour? And passed. Thank you. Item 14, urgent business. Item 14.1, Manningham City Council, MAV State Council motions. Do I have a mover?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I should have declared this, but I do have a conflict of interest with this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Diamante. Does Councillor have to fill out some? Is it general or?
This part of the motion.
That's fine. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Stephen Main, if you could read the motion.
You want to note her leaving?
Oh, sorry, I think it's noted. Yeah, Councillor Diamante's left.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First up,
hang on. Did you read the motion previously?
Oh, actually, because it's urgent, I need to read the whole motion, don't I? So,
the council endorsed the MAV. Yeah, just read that bit.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, the council endorsed the MAV State Council motion as circulated, and a copy of the motion and background be incorporated into the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Main. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goff. Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, for the benefit of the thousands of people watching the webcast who weren't circulated the urgent motion here, this is a three-part motion that we're putting up to the MAV State Council meeting on May the 21st at the Melbourne Town Hall. So the MAV is the Municipal Association of Victoria. All 79 councils are automatically members, and most of them are financial at the moment. And twice a year we get together and debate motions that are relevant to the sector. So individual council members will often put up motions to be debated at the State Council. And we've proposed the single motion here tonight, which is a three-part procurement motion, suggesting that the MAV explore the feasibility of extending its current sector-wide procurement offerings to include 1, large-scale importation of electric vehicles, 2, free newspaper production and distribution in light of the significant increase in LGA news deserts across Victoria following the decision by News Corp last year to cease printing of most of its suburban and regional newspapers across Australia, and 3, exploring procurement opportunities in banking services, particularly in light of multiple Big Four branch closures post the lockdowns, which have been led by CBA, the clear market leader in the provision of banking services to Victorian councils. So I just want to briefly touch on all three of those. I know Councillor Lightbody was particularly enthusiastic about the electric vehicle element of this. We have one of the lowest rates of electric vehicle take-ups in the developed world. This is partly because it's cost prohibitive to do so. So if the MAV can go and source a very big boat and a couple of thousand electric cars that councils across the state might want to buy, and they can save us 20% on a group deal, then that's something that the MAV should get into, and it would be good to get that, because I know that Manningham, like many other councils, don't have much of an EV fleet. The newspaper one's a bit more controversial. So I know some councillors love the fact that all the newspapers have closed and there's no one to get stuck into us over issues and we can just rule with less accountability. As a working journalist, I have a different view, which is that newspapers are pivotal to democracy and accountability and good governance. And to keep us honest, the sector should have a look at whether we can do anything to try and stimulate or bring back independent journalism covering communities and councils, informing communities and holding councillors to account. Obviously controversial given the separation of church and state and the fourth estate in the media, but if the MAV was to buy 49% of Leader or be gifted 49% of Leader, a few councils get together with some advertising contracts to get print back on board, and our community is suddenly receiving a weekly newspaper again. We spend less on Manningham Matters, more people know what's going on, the community's for the better. It's something that probably, I know it's been done individually by the City of Melbourne. They've just done a deal with their local proprietor, big advertising spend, 5 different copies based on different suburbs. You know, if we were to do something similar, Warrandyte Diary, here's some advertising, please do the Bulleen Diary, the Doncaster Diary, that, you know, stimulate through advertising better communications, but not just council spin through Manningham Matters, because as much as Manningham Matters is fantastic, when we're writing about ourselves, it's conflict of interest and we're never going to tell them any of the dirty linen, are we? So the third one is banking services. It's a bit of history. The State Bank of Victoria was bought by the Commonwealth Bank in 1993. That history means that the Commonwealth Bank has about 50 of the 79 councils in terms of a banking contract. There's never been a group deal on that. The $140 billion bank, they're making $10 billion a year. They're probably ripping us off. So what about 50 councils get together and say, hey, Commonwealth Bank, let's have better value for money. And also, please stop shutting any branches. If you want our business, provide a decent service in our local activity centres. Macedon Square has been recently closed. Tunstall's temporarily closed. We want bank branches, 1 in our local activity centres, and we'll have a banking desert in Macedon Square. We have one now. I know I'm on time. I won't say anything more. I hope the colleagues can support this.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I rise to support these particular motions. I think it's shocking that I'm talking about electric cars. Anyway, the two items, and it is important that there will be a transition in Australia, and it is important that those vehicles become affordable and comparable to petrol cars into the future. I know it is the future. It seems to be the very big future in Europe. But really, I want to concentrate on the newspapers and the banking. First of all, I'll start with the banking services. Our community, and especially in the area of Bulleen, where I represent, is one of the oldest aged groups of people within the area, and so with Manningham is an older population. Yes, we do have young people, we have youth, we have people from all levels, but accessing financial services is extremely important, and perhaps traditional for the older people, traditional banking services, and they have been withdrawn. With the big four banks, Bulleen Plaza is around, it used to have 4 banks of the major banks there. It now has one, which is a sort of a branch that you can go into and do your work electronically, and there's somewhere there to help you. It's not really a branch, and if you want to actually go and speak to a person in that bank, you have to make an appointment for another day. It really is a Clayton's Bank, and if you're old enough to know what a Clayton's Bank is and what Clayton's is, yeah, well, you're older than, well, you're about my age. But basically, it is very, very important that we have access, and it's also very important for those shopping centres to have access to banking services in person, not just electronically. Going back to the newspapers, and I think I was talking to the CEO last week, and I was lamenting the fact that we don't have local papers, and the accountability of local news is not there from the operation of council, but also the celebration of lives of people that live in our community that would actually star in a local paper, be it on the front page or somewhere with some event that's going on, which celebrated a community and local life of where we live. And that is being lost in our society, and it's being lost to a concept of universality, anonymity. You don't know who's writing or saying or whatever. There's no background to the truth of anything you read on the internet. You don't know about it. And I think we need to sort of look at that loss in our society. It stops the celebration, and it stops people being able to complain or spread news, good or bad, around our community. And indeed, if there does need to be an aid to get that, because I look at the Leader newspaper, and yes, it has a Leader inner, it has a Middle East, an Inner Eastern, a Middle Eastern, and an Outer Eastern. And not one of those Easterns really, or there was in one, sometimes, but it doesn't include Manningham really at all. We're just sort of overlooked in that regard. And it is a loss, because if people are unaccountable for a long time, and that's where the arrogance of bureaucracy gets a foothold. We need a community to bring all organisations to reality.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers for the motion? Oh, I had Thomas first. Sorry, Councillor Whitebody and then Councillor Lamb.
I think it's great that Jeff's spoken on the second and third points, because I want to talk on the first. I think the past few years have shown that Victorian councils have worked terrifically together in the development of the bulk purchase of renewable energy. And I think given that success, a bulk purchase of electric vehicles presents a great opportunity for more council cooperation and work through the MAV as well. I think not only would this potentially save council money, it could also speed up our move to net zero emissions, and also help bring potentially new models of EVs to Australia. I think the potential scale of local government involvement could help boost this transition to electric vehicles, while also showing confidence and leadership in the electric vehicle policy area, which is greatly absent in other levels of government in Australia. I think this, along with the other two points of this motion, are great initiatives, and I hope the other council representatives at MAV support our motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also support this motion, especially listening to fellow councillors speaking around the table and their points of view. I just want to add on Councillor Goff's point of view that face-to-face banking is not just important for our older residents, but it's actually important for our younger generations as well, so that it helps them learn the value of actually physically handing over money, which has been proven better for their own budgeting and ability to understand the value of money. Therefore, I support looking at providing a number of banking facilities that people can go to within all our municipality. In terms of our newspaper, I happen to live in Yarra Ward, which happens to be quite privileged with a very professional, fantastic and community spirit newspaper. But we should be looking to have our whole Manningham community to be in this privileged situation, and also to have all councils in that same category. So working together on a group procurement is very important. And in terms of our electric vehicles, I really welcome and can't wait for the initiative of electric vehicles and to see more of them. But as raised, the expense of the electric vehicles, especially as new technology keeps to continue coming out, making them better and better, we need to be looking at group procurement so that these are affordable, so councils can be up with the trends. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? And that's carried. Unanimous. That's okay, is it? Item 15. Thank you, Councillor Lane, for putting that down. Item 15, Councillors' question time. Councillors, does anyone wish to raise a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do have a question.
Thank you. Councillor Goff. Question from Councillor.
My question, Mr. Mayor, is did I have it off the last speech?
Maybe.
I may have.
No,
I won't remember anything I said.
It's fine.
Okay. When will council get back to full board, or full people coming here to work at our workplace? What has council done to campaign for the government to stop the restrictions on workers coming to work? And what can we do to progress this with the government or somebody else as a council and a sector?
I'll refer that to the CEO. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Goff. In relation to the COVID-19 restrictions, obviously we've been following the regulations as set out by the state government. Up until this point in time, there's been density restrictions on council, on all councils and all organisations, as well as quotations in terms of the percentage of staff that can come back into the workplace. So we've been following those the whole way through, reopening customer service, all those sort of services as quickly as we possibly can. One of the first councils to reopen a customer service. So we've been monitoring those developments. You will have all noticed that there were some developments today in relation to the state government further easing restrictions, allowing workplaces to reopen, reducing density quotations, etc. So that was quite literally today. So we'll work through that over the next 2 days in terms of what that means for our workforce and continue that principle of ensuring that we're able to be here and provide the best possible services to community. In relation to advocating back through to the state government, there's been regular feedback from CEOs and opportunity to engage with state government through the MAV, so that's been happening quite regularly, and CEOs have been giving feedback quite directly to senior bureaucrats on the impact of the restrictions on our services, and that was right from the get-go when the shutdown was happening and has continued to occur right through the unlocking of those restrictions. So good news today for community, good news for us at Manningham, and we will, as I said, continue to adhere to those restrictions when they're required, but we'll work through those over the next 24 hours, wait for the regulations to actually come through in writing, and then continue to get back on site.
Thank you, CEO. Are there any other questions? Councillor Chen?
Simple question, yes. And have we received an inquiry from community groups about the renovation work of our function centre? When will that be completed? Because it received inquiry from a lot of ladies group about Mother's Day celebrations. So can
I don't think it's going to make
yeah, I know. If it's in June, or can officers contact those organizations and say that, well, the June will be the open day, so you are about to be able to book a venue. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor, the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor. I won't confess that I don't quite know when Mother's Day is, in case my own mum's watching, but I will...
May sometime.
It is May sometime, I'm sure it is. But I will come back to you, Councillor, and community in relation to when the expected finish date is. But given it is in May, it won't be by Mother's Day. But we'll come back to you with what that likely date is.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Stephen May.
Any update on where the enterprise agreement is at?
We have offers on the table at the moment, and are awaiting responses from the relevant bargaining parties in relation to the offer that's on the table at the moment.
Any other questions? Okay, there being no other questions, we'll move to confidential reports. There are no confidential reports. Close of meeting. Thank you, councillors.